morning, this is Dwayne, and today I'd like to take a quick overview of the principles of reading music. And this is really an overview. This is not really how to read music, but just to give you a quick overview in case you don't read music at all of what's involved in music reading. So first of all, we're going to consider what makes up music. First of all, music has three parts to it. It has melody, that's the tune of a song. That's a tune. That's a tune. That's a tune. That's a tune. That's a tune, and so on. Okay? We all know what a tune is. That's one part of music. That's the melody. And we need to learn how to read that. We'll talk about that in a second. The second part of music is rhythm. And rhythm is simply the difference between long notes and short notes combined. So you have some long notes and some short notes. If I played Silent Night like this, you'd say, well, that's lacking something. And the something that's lacking is rhythm, isn't it? It has a succession of notes, but it doesn't have any rhythmic flavor. So by adding some short notes, some long notes, you see that note was shorter, wasn't it? Long, short, long, short. So notes that have different kind of values, longer or shorter, that makes up rhythm. And of course we do that, in the left hand as well. I'm just talking about applying rhythm to the melody right now. And the third element of music reading is learning harmony or chords. And chords, of course, are three or more notes. Actually, you can have harmony with two notes. Two notes is called an interval, three notes is called a chord. And chords can have three notes or four notes or five notes or, a whole bunch of notes, okay? But that's what harmony is. It's the tonal support or tonal environment for the melody that happens. Okay, so there's three elements of music. What are they? Melody, rhythm, and harmony. And you have to learn how to read all three, okay? So let's take a quick look, first of all, at melody. So the first step in reading music is to learn how to read a melody. And the melody is the most important part of the three elements of music, because without a tune, without a melody, you really don't have a song. I mean, you can have rhythm and you can have harmony, but without a melody, a strong melody, you don't have really a song. So melodies in sheet music are written, for the most part, 95% of the time, in the treble clef. The treble clef is a staff of 5 notes and 4 spaces, and music goes up and down on that staff. So the bottom line of the staff in the treble clef is E, the second line is G, the third line is B, fourth line is D, and the fifth line is F. Okay, so every line is every other note from about the middle of the piano on up like that. And the spaces, of course, are the notes in between. If the lines are E, G, B, D, F, then the spaces are F, A, C, E. They spell the word face, okay? And so music progresses up or down, or stays the same. That's the only three ways a melody can go, isn't it? Either up, down, or staying the same. Okay? So in its very simplest aspect, that's what a melody does. It either goes up, goes down, or stays the same. All right? And music's written in the treble clef. So to learn to read music, you'd have to learn the notes of the treble clef and then learn to identify them and so on. And the purpose today is just an overview. I obviously can't teach you to do that on a 5-minute video, but at least you see what the overall plan is. Okay? The next step for you in learning to read music will be rhythm, learning the different note values and how long they're held. In music, most measures have either 3 counts in them, 3 beats, or 4 counts in them. So if you hold a note for a whole measure, that's called a whole note. And it would get 4 counts in 4/4 time. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what do you think a half note would get? Right, half of that measure, in other words, 2 beats. 1, 2. And a quarter note, therefore, would get what? 1 beat, right? An eighth note would get half a beat. 1 and 2 and 3, those are eighth notes, okay? Because you only get half of them, half a beat. Okay, and then there's dotted notes, like dotted half notes. The dot adds half the value of the note to the note. So if you have a a half note that gets 2, and a dot gets 1, then it would get 3 total beats, right? 1, 2, 3. A quarter note, a dot after a quarter note would add half the value of the quarter note to the note. The quarter note gets 1, so the dot would be worth a half. So together they get 1 and a half. 1, 2, and like it would sound like that. Okay. And then also in music reading, rhythm, there are rests. There are rests that get a whole. They're called whole rests, and they rest a whole measure. In other words, you don't play for a whole measure. And there's half rests. You don't play for half a measure. So if there's not enough notes to fill up a measure, then there'll be a rest, which will fill up the measure, which means you don't play for that part of a measure. So there's whole rests. There's half rests, there's quarter rests, there's eighth rests, and so on, just like there are notes, okay? So that's the basics of rhythm. Now let's go on to the basics of harmony, or chords. The final element of learning to read music is learning about chords and how to read chords. Chords are the harmonic environment, the background to the melody and the rhythm. And there's basically 4 kinds of chords. There's many other kind of chords, but the 4 basic kinds of chords are major, minor, diminished, and augmented chords. Okay? Major, minor, diminished, and augmented. A chord is a 3-note animal, properly called a triad. A 3-note chord is called a triad. A 4-note chord is not called a triad, because triad means 3, obviously. So you can have 4-note chords or 5-note chords or whatever. Okay? But a 3-note, there's 4 basic kinds of 3-note chords: major, minor, diminished, and augmented. Now a chord is a stack of notes made out of the root, the third, and the fifth of a major scale. A major scale is a succession of notes that goes like that, as you probably know. Okay, and we don't have time to go into major scales, but suffice it to say that a chord is simply made out of the scales using a root, a third, and a fifth of that major scale. All the major scales. Let me just play them quickly so you can see them. But again, this is not to teach you, this is just to give you an overview of it. Here are the major scales, major chords: C, F, G, D, E, A, D flat, E flat, A flat, G flat, B, and B flat. Then any major scale can be made minor by lowering the third of the chord. So if this is C major, then I lower the third a half step, and that's C minor. To make diminished triad, I lower the third and the fifth. So that's a C diminished triad. To make an augmented triad, I raise the fifth a half step, and so that's an augmented triad. Okay? So the 3 elements of learning to read music again are learning the melody, learning to read the melody, learning to read the time values of quarter notes, half notes, and so on, and then learning about chords and harmony. Now, this is just a general overview of the whole process, but if you want more details on it, then go on over to playpiano.com and sign up for my free newsletter, and over the course of time you'll get a lot of information about chords and rhythm and harmony and melody and all kinds of stuff. Plus we have a course on reading music if you'd like to pursue that in detail. So thanks for being with me, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye for now.